When we hear the word private, most of us immediately think of the military. It's the rank given to the lowest enlisted soldier, the entry point into the armed forces. But have you ever stopped to wonder why exactly it's called a private? It's a curious name, especially when compared to other ranks like captain, colonel, or general, which sound formal and commanding. The word private by itself doesn't seem to carry that same sense of authority. It almost feels out of place. Yet it's a term that has been deeply rooted in military traditions for centuries. In today's video, we're going to break down the history of the rank private, uncover its linguistic roots, and explain how it became the universal title for the starting rank in armies across the world. Let's explore, right here, on History of Simple Things. The word private itself comes from the Latin term privatus, meaning individual, or separated from the state. In medieval and early modern Europe, a private person was someone who did not hold public office or possess noble titles. They were considered ordinary citizens, separate from rulers in the upper classes. Over time, the word began to describe anyone who acted in a personal capacity rather than in an official role. This distinction between public and private became very important in society, and eventually it made its way into military usage. Unlike nobles or knights who joined the military with their titles intact, the common man who enlisted brought no such distinctions. He was simply a private person, which is how the rank eventually got its name. Back in the late Middle Ages, military service was dominated by aristocracy. Nobles, knights, and men of higher social standing were usually the ones who became officers or cavalry. Ordinary citizens who joined armies didn't come with titles or wealth. They were considered private individuals. Armies needed a way to distinguish between the titled elite and the untitled common soldier. By calling them privates, military leaders highlighted their status as individuals without any special rank, privilege, or title. In other words, it wasn't that they were private in the sense of secrecy. It was that they were private in the sense of being ordinary, separated from positions of authority. The word became more formalized as standing armies developed in Europe. In the 16th and 17th centuries, many nations began shifting away from feudal levies, where knights brought their own men, to centralized armies controlled by kings and states. Soldiers who signed contracts to serve were often referred to as private soldiers. This was meant to show that they were enlisted individuals, separate from nobles or officers, but still serving under the authority of the state. Over time, the second half of the term soldier was dropped, and the word private alone became the official designation for the lowest rank. The English Army played a particularly important role in cementing this usage. In the 1600s, English military manuals frequently referred to the lowest rank as private soldier. The phrase highlighted the difference between commissioned officers who held royal authority and the enlisted men, who were private individuals serving for pay. Eventually, the term shortened simply to private, and by the 18th century, it was firmly entrenched as the standard lowest rank. Other armies, influenced by English military traditions, also began adopting the same terminology. Interestingly, the word private did not always carry the same neutral meaning it does today. At times, it carried an undertone of humility or lack of prestige. For example, to call someone a private man in early English often implied they had no special power, no office, and no influence. That social distinction carried over to the military rank. Officers were figures of authority and command, while privates were seen as ordinary, often expendable soldiers who made up the bulk of the army. While that might sound harsh, it reflected the rigid social structure of the time, where hierarchy was considered natural and expected. Despite its humble origins, the title private has endured across centuries and across cultures. Today, in many modern armies, the term is still the official designation for the lowest enlisted rank. For example, the U.S. Army uses private for its entry-level soldiers, and many other nations retain the same structure. Of course, there are variations. Different armies have modified the title with added distinctions, like Private First Class in the U.S. military. In the British Army, regiments sometimes use other terms such as guardsman, rifleman, or trooper, but private remains the most widespread and widely understood. Another fascinating point is that the word private connects to the very idea of individuality within the military system. While soldiers are trained to act as part of a collective unit, the term private emphasizes that at the foundation, each soldier is still an individual who has chosen to enlist. In many ways, the word reflects the duality of military life. The private is both an ordinary citizen and the essential building block of the entire army. Without privates, there would be no military force, because every general, every officer, and every commander started at the bottom of that ladder. Over time, the cultural perception of the word private has shifted. While it once highlighted an individual's lack of authority, today it's seen as a starting point, a place of honor where every soldier begins their journey. Some of the greatest military leaders in history, from George Washington's Continental Army recruits to modern-day decorated veterans, began as privates. The rank represents humility, discipline, and the willingness to serve. In that sense, the word private has gained a level of respect far beyond its original humble meaning. So to answer the question, why is a private rank called a private? The short answer is that it comes from the word's original meaning, a private individual, a person without title, office, or nobility. As armies professionalized and expanded, this term became the perfect way to describe the ordinary citizen soldier at the base of the hierarchy. What began as a simple way to distinguish commoners from nobles evolved into a formalized rank, one that has stood the test of time for hundreds of years. Today, the title private continues to carry historical weight, reminding us that even the most ordinary individual has a place in shaping history through military service. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.